Well, for more on the Conservative Party and where they go from here, we've invited two Conservative strategists to our program today. Jamie Ellerton is the principal with Canaptus Limited, and Andrew Brander is a senior consultant with Crestview Strategies. So hello to the two of you.
Hi, Michael.
Morning.
So listen, I want to begin here with that last report that we referenced in the Toronto Star, because that newspaper reporting that the Conservative Fund Board, on which Stephen Harper sits, will be conducting this internal audit, this over the use of party funds to pay for private school tuition for Andrew Scheer's kids. So Jamie, I'm going to begin with you here. What's your reaction to that? Does this issue have the potential to hurt the party, in particular when it comes to fundraising?
I think it does, because if you think you have people across the country who typically donate in small numbers, $25, $50, $100 at a time, they think that's going to help build the re-election readiness, helping the party operate and kind of build national appeal. When they find out that that's instead paying for private education for the leader who's already in government housing within Stornoway as the leader of the official opposition, that just doesn't sit right. So in a party, there are certain expenses that would get covered that might sound a bit out of the ordinary. That's kind of usual for us. But to be paying for your kids' private education, I think that just doesn't sit right, and I think it's good that the party's looking into this.
Because it doesn't sit right with many, obviously, if they're ordering this internal review. But Andrew, what's your thought? Does this have the potential to hurt the party?
Yeah, I'd agree with Jamie, but it also comes down to the accountability of who was responsible for that. As we saw late last night, there were reports that the executive director of the party has been fired over this. If we are going to start
reports,
looking
although
at
some people are pushing
reports.
back on that report.
However, I'd say Jamie and I both know Dustin very well, and he's an exceptional asset to the party. And so if we're going to be looking at holding people accountable, perhaps who administered the payment, perhaps we should also be looking at those who are the purveyor of those funds. So, I mean, I think it's pretty ironic at some point to be able to, cast accountability on people like the executive director without looking at, in terms of a broader scope on who ultimately made a poor decision to allow that to proceed.
And of course, as you say, the concern is that it hurts the party's fundraising efforts going forward. But I wonder, does that lead, credence to the argument that a leadership convention should happen very quickly? Because even though Andrew Scheer has announced his resignation, the controversy around him has not gone away. Does it mean to say then a leadership should come quickly to push this all aside for the party?
Yeah, so I think Andrew Scheer and how long he stays in that job is one question, although he says he would like to stay on until a new leader is chosen. I think facts and circumstances might have him out of that job a little sooner. But for the party, I do think we need to move to elect a leader. It's not necessarily a convention in the old delegated sense. It's one member, one vote, 100 points per riding all across the country. And I think the sooner that process starts, the more we can kind of move past this election loss. We can focus on John Baird's postmortem to learn where some of the mistakes were made, and then see what new leadership candidates, how they're going to build a bigger Conservative Party, how they're going to have a conservatism that's more expansive, that brings people into the fold, that resonates across the country. And I think a lot of members are ready to have that conversation.
Well, I do want to get to that conversation, but very quickly on this whole idea of getting a leadership quickly. Yeah. If it does happen quickly, though, does that allow for sufficient vetting for whoever becomes the next leader?
Well, I think that's why the rules for the leadership selection process are going to be so important. I think the party really needs to look at the levels of how many members you need to qualify, how many signatures you need, how much money you need to put forward in order to make yourself a legitimate candidate. What the party needs to avoid at this time is allowing single-issue candidates who are going to come in and be able to distract from that very important conversation that we would all acknowledge we need to have.
Okay, well, let's get to the conversation, because as we said, less than 48 hours here, but already we're getting some prominent names of people floating about. Let's take a look at some of the names already put out there as potential new leaders. And of course, Aaron O'Toole, according to reports, is ready to jump in. He's just one. But the other names include people like Peter MacKay, of course, a former Foreign Affairs Minister under Stephen Harper. Also Rona Ambrose, the former interim leader for the party. Michael Chong, who's ran for leadership before. Not to mention the possibility of Lisa Raitt. So I'm going to get you guys to kind of judge that horse race in a second. But when it comes to what you actually need as party members for your next leader, what is it? Because really, whoever steps into that role, Jamie, is going to have to try to manage the expectations of conservatives who have a bit more of a progressive bent versus social conservatives?
So I actually don't think this is a social conservative versus progressive frame at all. It's where is Canada today? Where is the Conservative Party today? Who can appeal to most conservatives and genuinely unite the party? And then who can appeal to the most Canadians in a general election? And so I think if you look at the history of the Conservative Party, it is no secret the heartland and the base of the Conservative Party is in Western Canada. We don't need a leader who's just going to kind of play on Western anxiety and Western animosity right now. We need a leader who's going to be able to take that animosity, put it into constructive solutions, and create national appeal so that we get more support for things like resource development and pipelines in Atlantic and Eastern Canada.
But is that the disconnect, though? As you say, there's a lot of people in the West who support the Conservatives, and forgive me, but you are a Central Canadian Conservative.
Absolutely.
So how do you marry the two? Because you might say it's not a divide between progressive and social conservatives, but there certainly are social conservatives that will be upset if the next leader does not represent their views.
So I think if you look at kind of where the party is at today, a lot of what has gone on is that you kind of do see people falling into base kind of factions and base camps within the party. But one thing that was not really present in the last leadership race that I expect to be far more prominent in this one is electability. People don't want their person to be leader and then to spend another 1 or 2 parliamentary terms in opposition. So they're going to want someone who has national appeal, someone who, yes, can speak to what's legitimate animosity and anxiety in Western Canada right now as they continue to essentially have their economy held down by Justin Trudeau and the Liberal government's policies, but actually be able to form government and put those things into action. And so I think electability is going to be far more a frame for how people judge potential candidates compared to how that was in 2016.
I see you nodding your head yes there.
Yeah, it's about building that coalition as well, someone who can reach out to both sides of the party. It's also important that the party picks someone who is well defined already. I think we went through an exercise last time where in a very short period of time, the Liberals were able to take a single issue and define the leader based on that. I think the party needs someone with a well-established brand, someone like a few of the names you mentioned there, though I'm told Lisa Raitt is not considering it. But I think you need someone with that background that doesn't give or afford the Liberals the space to come in and occupy it with their agenda.
Okay, we literally have 30 seconds, so this is a quick go around. Who do you think should be stepping into that role? Andrew.
I really think I think we need to see someone who's willing to move the party forward with the more. Well, I'm gonna wait to see. And to be quite frank, I think all candidates at this point should avoid entering a race until we have leadership rules, because the length of the leadership rule is are going to determine who the next leader is.
Okay, so no name from Andrew. How about you, Jamie?
Strong Western leaders like Brad Wall and Jason Kenney have suggested Ronna Ambrose, so it'll be interesting to see if she comes back into the fold to ultimately lead the party permanently going forward.
Okay. Thank you for joining us today, both of you, Jamie and Andrew. Jamie Ellerton being the principal with Canaptus Limited, Andrew Brander, senior consultant with Crestview Strategies.